Welcome to livingpianos.com. Robert Estrin with why are perfect intervals perfect? What's perfect about them? Why are they called perfect? There's a really good reason. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, there are essentially two different types of intervals, two categories of intervals. There's more than two types of intervals, but there's two categories of intervals. Perfect intervals and major intervals. Perfect intervals are your prime, which is like a unison, like a middle C and a middle C, or it could even be a middle C and a middle C sharp, or a middle C and a C flat. Anytime you have the same line or space in your music, that's called a prime, regardless of accidentals. A major interval, okay, the perfect intervals are prime, fourth, fifth, and octave. And so what are your major intervals? Your second, third, sixth, and seventh. Now, here is, in a nutshell, the difference between perfect intervals and major intervals. Perfect intervals, like a fifth, when you invert it, you have a fourth. And that's why they're perfect in a nutshell. I'm going to tell you a lot more, though, so keep watching. Perfect intervals remain perfect when they are inverted. A prime and an octave are essentially the same thing, aren't they? And a fourth and a fifth inverted. They remain perfect. What about major intervals? We'll take a major third. And incidentally, anytime you have the note of the major scale, the interval will be perfect or major. So in C major, all of these intervals are perfect or major. The prime, fourth, fifth, and octave are the perfect, the second, third, sixth, and seventh, and so forth in any key. These are all your major and perfect intervals. So, now, what happens when you invert a major interval? There's a major interval. Third note of a C major scale is E. Invert it, what's the sixth note of the E major scale? Oh! C sharp. So what has happened to the interval? It's gotten smaller by a half step. It is now a minor sixth. In fact, anytime you invert a major interval, it becomes minor, and vice versa. This is what the difference is between perfect intervals, which remain perfect when inverted, and major intervals, which become minor when inverted. Incidentally, when intervals become larger, like a major interval becomes larger by a half step, or a perfect interval becomes larger by a half step, they become augmented, C to G sharp. Interesting thing is when you invert augmented intervals, they become diminished. And vice versa there. So that's it in a nutshell. Perfect intervals remain perfect when you invert them. All other intervals change. Major intervals become minor, minor intervals become major, augmented intervals become diminished, diminished intervals become augmented. That's a lot to get your head around, isn't it? Check it out for yourself and you will be amazed. It brings enlightenment to your music. Again, I'm Robert Estrin. This is livingpianos.com. If you'd like to learn more about music theory, technique, performance, sight reading, and memorization, you can consider joining my Living Piano Mastermind Club. The link's in the description for your free consultation. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you next time.